In researching a suitable short story to read, I came across a book by James Wayland entitled 50 Real Ghost Stories, Terrifying Real-Life Encounters with Ghosts and Spirits. A ghost story should never end perfectly. That is my rule of thumb. After investigating ghost experiences for nearly 30 years, I realized that the finely polished stories told by storytellers and ghost walkers were exactly that, polished. In polishing stories, we lose the personality of the haunted and indeed the haunter itself. That's why in my books, research papers and articles, I always maintain the original testaments and facts, and the only one of the 50 that I shall recite is entitled The Russian Ghost. I saw a ghost while I was on holiday in Russia. I was travelling by coach in a party of 8 to 12 others. We had been travelling most of the day to get to the town of Kostrumo in the Golden Ring outside of Moscow. The countryside consists of vast expanses of Siberian silver birch and forests. As we neared the village, I noticed out of the window on my left a graveyard. Standing next to a grave was what I assumed to be a woman in a black cloak, who was a widow mourning the loss of her husband. It was strange, but not unusual to see this. I noticed that in the graveyard was an orchard of cherry trees. I did not think too much about this and looked away. I then took a glance again over my shoulder. As I looked back through the coach window, the figure had moved and was now standing next to a low wall and the wrought iron gates, the main entrance. The figure was ominously tall, looking much more than normal, and took on a threatening presence or shape. I noticed that there was no face in the hood of the cloaked figure. Far more disturbing, though, was that it seemed to be watching me and its hands were rested upon the top wall. I got a glimpse of its hands. It was not human. The hands and fingers on them were very long, over a meter in length, and were skeletal, long and bony. As I continued to look back at it, a skull appeared in the hood and 2 orange eyes looked back and it grinned at me. I looked away instantly and did not look back, as I figured that it represented death. I thought I must have been imagining things, so I tried to put the whole thing out of my mind and get on with the rest of the holiday. One thing that did strike me as odd was that the graveyard was completely run down and overgrown with long grass. No one had been there in months or, in fact, years. So what was this figure doing there? I did not think too much about the incident and had forgotten about it. 2 days later, I arrived at a new hotel and had sat down to eat dinner in the main restaurant along with other Japanese guests. As I ate, I looked up into the corner of the restaurant, and it was decorated with pots and other antiques. But what drew my attention was a large wood carving by a Russian artist of a figure from Russian folklore. My blood chilled to the bone, for there was a carving of a hooded figure, a man who looked like a monk. His eyes were black-looking, and the arms on the figure were completely outstretched. Its fingers were long and bony, at least over a meter long. This was exactly what I had seen in the graveyard. I knew then that what I had seen was indeed real.